Many of the aspects which I'm going to discuss, they've already been discussed by the previous speakers, and we would like to have some additional answers as well. So we're looking at the factors which are affecting the fusion rates in a minimally invasive TLIF. And we all know about this slide, what are the advantages of MIS-TLIF over the conventional techniques and how fusion is important for a good clinical outcome. The factors which affect the fusion may be multifactorial, which can be divided as patient-related factors, biological factors, surgical techniques, the choice of implant and the graft, and the post-operative factors. If you look at the patient-related factors, the important factors are the smoking status, diabetic status, osteoporosis, obesity, age, and activity level. So let's discuss in detail about each of them. So we all know the fact that smoking is detrimental for bone growth, bone development, and fusion. And nicotine and carbon monoxide, they have been implicated as the culprits which impede osteogenesis, angiogenesis, and collagen synthesis, significantly elevating the pseudoarthrosis rates. The effect of smoking is true for both open and MIS-TLIF, so it's not that MIS-TLIF is affected more. The question remains, which in the mind of both the patient and the surgeon offering the surgery, is how long does the patient need to stop smoking before a fusion surgery? So what I follow in my practice and what the literature also supports is minimum of 3 to 4 weeks smoking cessation has to be there for an elective fusion surgery before I take up the patient. It helps in two things. It slightly improves the microvascularity at the fusion bed and also gives me a kind of feeling how committed a patient is towards smoking cessation in the post-operative period. Looking at the literature, this was a study, important study by Glassman published in 2000, in which the reported non-union rates was 14.2% for a lumbar fusion for non-smokers, in contrast to 26.5% for patients who continue to smoke after surgery, obviously statistically significant. But patients who quit smoking after surgery for longer than 6 months had non-union rates slightly lesser than non-quitters, but still higher than a non-smoker patient. And the non-union rate was not significantly affected by either the quantity that a patient smoked before surgery or duration of preoperative smoking abatement. So this fact that how long the patient should quit, it should be minimum 3 to 4 weeks post-operatively, and for how long they should quit after the surgery. Ideally, it should be forever. But first 3 to 4 weeks are important because that is the most critical time for angiogenesis and infusion process. And in the first 6 months, there is a differentiation to osteoblasts and increased collagen deposition. So minimum of 6 months abatement should be there for a lesser pseudoarthrosis rate. Future studies are required on the role of nicotine replacement therapies such as e-cigarettes, Chantix, Nicorette gums, which are all available in the market, and what is the role of these replacement strategies on the fusion, because now many patients, especially young patients, are switching to these kind of therapies. So several studies have shown that low-dose nicotine, in fact, may stimulate bone formation, and smoke condensate may have some chemicals which are actually the culprit and not the low-dose nicotine. And there are several studies published, and including the animal studies published, to prove this. So future studies will help us establish the role of these nicotine replacement device therapies as well on the fusion. Coming to the next cause, diabetes mellitus, we all know that chronic hyperglycemia leads to development of advanced glycation end products which impair osteoblast function and bone matrix, apart from the microangiopathy which develops at the site of the fusion mass. So do diabetic patients have poorer clinical outcomes and radiological outcomes in MIS-TLIF? The answer is yes, but most of the studies have shown that the patient-related outcomes are poorer in the early period, but long-term results are similar in diabetic versus non-diabetic patients. Fusion rates, however, are poorer as compared to a non-diabetic individual. The other patient-related factors are osteoporosis because it diminishes the quality of fusion bed, compromises implant anchorage, increases rate of subsidence and pseudoarthrosis rate. Obesity because there is increased mechanical stress on spinal instrumentation, wound healing complications and surgical site infection rates, advanced age and activity level. In activity level, premature strenuous physical activity may increase micromotion at the fusion site. On the other hand, if a patient has a poor muscle mass, fatty infiltration of the multifidus in the paraspinal muscles, and sarcopenia, then there is increased stress on the implant construct, which can also lead to increased pseudoarthrosis rate. Coming to the surgical technique related factors, end plate preparation has to be meticulous both in open TLIF and MIS-TLIF. So we advise not to use sharp shavers in weak bone, just like we discussed in the previous talk. And we use the regular routine blunt shavers also, as Sir mentioned, Suri mentioned, which are available with both the imported and the Indian companies instead of the differently designed shavers, and they are found to be safe in a weak end plate. Cage positioning, intraoperative navigation are also important to put the screws and cage in the precise orient trajectory to get a better outcome. In early learning curve, it may be better to use an expandable retractor MIS-TLIF so that you have a better angulation of rasps and curettes. Long, bayoneted and angled curettes are more helpful in MIS-TLIF so that you are able to do a good end plate preparation because you are working through a narrow corridor. And adequate angulation of tube and retractors is important for correct trajectory of end plate preparation and cage placement. In terms of cage material, titanium PEEK, we all know the advantages and disadvantages of both. I would just like to quickly mention these studies where titanium cages have been shown to have a better fusion result because of lesser incidence of subsidence as compared to PEEK. PEEK has a disadvantage that it doesn't allow a cellular overgrowth and therefore fusion rates may be lesser. 3D printed cages are now all over the market. They are giving an advantage that the titanium did not have, that reduces the elastic modulus and brings it closer to PEEK so that the fusion rates may be slightly better. So I'll just take a few seconds to finish the last two slides. Graft related factors. So we all know the most limiting factor in MIS-TLIF is the availability and the volume of the bone graft. Allograft remains the gold standard. There is a debate if the local bone, especially the sclerotic degenerated bone, has the same potential as the iliac crest or fusion bone, but it continues to be the most commonly graft material used. Use chisels and bone scalpel instead of drill to get more volume as compared to drills. If the volume is less, it can be extended by bone graft extenders like beta TCP. BMP, costly, very good results, but again disputable because of potential complications like radiculitis and FDA approvals for a transforaminal route use. So conclude, to MIS-TLIF with excellent clinical and radiological terms in terms of fusion rates. Results are comparable to open TLIF in terms of fusion, but patient-related factors need to be optimized and counseled in pre-operative discussions. And autograft volume is one thing in which the MIS-TLIF surgery has to be better planned as compared to an open TLIF. Thank you, sir.